Hey friends, I'm Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video will make happy a number of you who like to use the Rider-Waite Smith or the Waite-Coleman-Smith collaboration deck. Now, today is a side-by-side of the two most accurate to the original 1909 deck that we have available to us today. And I showcased one of them already. One that I showcased is the 1909 restoration deck created by C in London. And at the time, and it came out a couple of years ago, Saskia Jansen, who had the original deck that was used to scan the item, said at that time that it was a highly accurate reproduction of her deck. However, she noted that the yellows were not exact, maybe due to the modern public, printing process or whatever, but the yellow was not captured. But, otherwise it was very close. And then I learned of the deck created by the same scans by a gentleman named Conrad Steyn, who recreated the deck using the same scans that were created by a Japanese gentleman who used Ms Saskia's original deck. Now, as I mentioned, the 1909 was the first of Pam A Crackle Backs' publications. I believe that she presented only black and white images, and a few of those cards come with the restoration deck by C in London. So we see just a taste of what her black and whites look like. Of course, both of these decks have the original Pamela lettering, which is very good because we know as the deck got regurgitated over the years, not only did the line work change, but they also forewent her original hand in the lettering on the bottom titles of each card for, I don't know, whatever reason. Maybe they thought it looked more professional not to have her lettering. So I thought it might be a great idea to show the restoration deck, 1909 restoration deck created by C in London, side by side with, at the moment, the most accurate reproduction of the only one existing 1909 tarot deck on the planet. The one that was done by Conrad Steyn. Now, since purchasing this second deck, I've also learned that Ms Jansen has stated that there's now a third printing, which she thinks is going to be closer yet to all these others. But it hasn't been published yet, and I don't have it yet. So for now, we're going to compare the two that we actually have on hand. So let me flip the camera and we'll get to it. All right, so let me identify which deck is which. On the left is the 1909 restoration deck created by C in London. And here is the box. Just a simple box. However, it's a little different than usual. It opens on the vertical rather than the horizontal. But it's a tuck box. And then for the make playing cards, which is where Conrad Steyn makes these decks available, I just requested a simple tuck box. However, you can, if you prefer, to order a box which is in keeping with the original box created for this deck. But that was another, $11, I think, and I was already paying like $12 for shipment. So I'd be paying almost as much for the box and the shipping as I was for the deck. So I just passed on that. So right out of the gate, we can see from this distance a pretty significant difference between the color yellow in both of these first cards representing the Fool. We also can notice, I think, especially when we put it up against each other, the difference in the border and the base color. You see it in the sun. So I don't know if the 1909 made an effort to just not, use the base color of the background, or if that's the way it photographed. But it does seem as though just out of the gate that the Conrad Steyn version, maybe it's got warts and all. It's just the color of the card as it exists today, 110 years, 113 years, after being published. Let's take a look also at the backs. So I don't know which one of these backs is more authentic. We have a deeper, richer blue with this version than we do with the 1909 art restoration. The blue here is more pale. So I'm assuming that across the board, we're going to see that big difference in the color of yellow between the two decks. The line work in the Conrad Steyn publication looks a little more there. It's not as delicate. But if they're both based, if they're both scans, right, of the deck, I'm not really sure why there would be a difference in the way the line looks, unless it's an optical illusion. The way the line appears on a more white background than a beige. That's possible, because color affects color. And you see the yellow here is more pronounced than the yellow here. I really would be interested to know then what the third printing from these original scans would look like. What the heck? I got two hierophants. Oh man. How do I have two hierophants? Oh, Jesus. My eyes are playing tricks on me. My goodness. I did notice that the Conrad Steyn deck is about 6 cards taller or thicker than the 1909. And again, you see the difference in the yellows. And it could be, because, it could be simply that the printing of yellow on white background, which is what it looks like they did here, just looks brighter than if you just took a scan of the deck as it exists currently. course, you would think it would affect all the colors. And I guess to some degree, if we look at the rest, they might look a little different between them, but the most pronounced difference is in the yellows. So I don't know how interested you are in seeing every deck side by side. Every card in each deck side by side. Look, say the oranges look pretty similar, as do those blues. The green, which of course contains yellow, is a little brighter, right? The orange contains yellow too, but it's not as different in the lion. I want to mention also that today I'll be receiving the 1910 version by Conrad Steyn also, which was the deck that came the year later than the 1909. In 1909, apparently they ran a publication of 350 cards, 350 decks rather, and at some point, Arthur Waite, Edward Arthur Waite wasn't satisfied with the print run. So in 1910, he tried to recall all the original decks that he could from, that were released in 1909. And he re-released the deck in 1910 with colors that were more in keeping with what he had originally hoped. So I think, when that deck arrives today, I don't want to bombard you with two videos in a row, but, probably tomorrow I will be doing a side-by-side of this 1909, which, as I mentioned, is the closest to the original 1909, with the Conrad Steyn's 1910 publication. And we'll do a side-by-side to see what differences Edward Waite made, so that we can, more readily see how the first publication of 1909 differed from the publication we now reference as Pamela A, which was the 1910. So as far as having a preference, I don't know. If I had just the 1909, and knowing that the difference wasn't that significant, would I have purchased the second one? Probably. I'll probably purchase the third one too, in the interest of historical, just having it as close to the original historic deck as I can. But if you're just, not a collector and you already have the 1909 restoration, decide for yourself whether you think it would be, of interest to you to purchase the second deck. I don't believe anybody's making a profit off of the 1909 release by Steyn, except maybe MakePlayingCards.com, who's actually making the deck, publishing the deck. But I don't believe that Conrad Steyn is making much of any kind of commission at all, because between he and Saskia Jansen, they've very graciously just want these decks out there, to make available to any collector or anyone who wants decks as close to the source as they can get. Now see, I think the pinks are a little brighter in this one, a little more present, a little bit richer. So I thought this might be as interesting a time as any to aside from comparing these to each other, now you'll notice here in the black, there are more flecks of white than there are here. They're still there, or maybe it's just because this is a deeper, richer, more, more saturated black that the flecks look more prominent here. But what do you think? But I thought this was as good a time as any to show an example from a deck that could be purchased today, right? We completely, as I mentioned before, don't have Pamela Colman Smith's lettering, and the colors are different. The black is solid. There's no fleck at all, no flecks at all. The bodies have like an orangeness to them. The bat wings are different. These are more of a warm gray, despite being slightly different. And these are more blue. And to give you an idea of which publication this one is, I think this one, well, this is the box. And it says 1971. However, I think it was just a reprint of the 71. I think what I have is like a early 90s. Let me see if the box says anything. I hadn't bought the, 2007. Must be what this publication is, based on the 1991. Publication, based on the 1971 publication. So, oh, this is weird. Okay, so the booklet was revised in 2004. The deck itself came out in 2007. And it's based on 71, 91. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how U.S. Game Systems does stuff, but this is the box of the particular one I have. It has the barcode on it. When I purchased this, it was a replacement deck for an earlier deck that I had when I was young that was a casualty of life. I'll pull that box so you see. So this is as good a time as any to mention that one of my next videos, aside from the 1910 comparison to the 1909, will be to, well, anyway, let me show you this box first. So I was looking through personal items and that I haven't looked through for decades. And I found this box, referencing, the first time I bought the Rider-Waite deck. It doesn't have a year on the box, so I don't know what year I purchased it. But you see the magician is like bright red, his face, and he looks the same color as his robe. So anyway, if any of you know what year this was, it'd be great. I don't know what happened to the deck. I was hoping that I would find the deck inside the box that had this, and I don't know. I don't have it. But at any rate, that contents of that box had led me to have an epiphany about my life, in a sense. It brought to a conclusion a lifelong pursuit of my great-grandmother Josepha, and I most assuredly will share that with you in the next video or two that I do. It's very personal. But and some of you may not be interested because it has nothing to do with tarot, aside from the fact that she was a tarot card reader and I was, that's very little of interest to you. But I'm doing it primarily for my children who, and my descendants who are the reason pretty much that I started this channel, was for them to have a record of their ancestors' proclivities toward tarot and my collection and my feelings and how I interpret the cards. I'm trying to establish a library of my tarot life for my descendants, because in life kids sometimes aren't interested in you or aren't curious about something you do until you're dead 30 years. How it rolls. And I have grandchildren. And I started it before I had grandchildren, but now I have grandchildren, and I presume that I'll have more as the years go on, and some of them may be as interested in me as I am in one of my ancestors who left nothing. She left very little in this world to understand her, other than very few stories that were recounted to me through the years. And I've been on a mission, probably for the last 30 years, to learn more about her. And so I want to share the most recent acquisition of information that I have, which was a moment where I felt like I found the holy grail of her life for me. So let me randomly pull this card from, let me put this on pause. So I wanted to do a random pause to see how much of the bottom of the cards have been sacrificed in this version. But it doesn't seem like much. Doesn't seem like much has been sacrificed, although you can tell that the color, gosh. Oh, this is awful color. Awful color. I don't like it at all. That's probably why I never liked the deck, But, these decks are easier on the eyeballs, for sure. Easier on the eyeballs, most definitely. And I really can't wait to see how the 1910 deck differs from the 1909. And I'll use this one as the comparison, since Ms Jansen thinks that this one is the most accurate. Because the difference between these two is not like all that big. It's very subtle. Just the yellows are a bit brighter in this one. And I don't really know how my earlier deck that I had would have compared to what came out in 2007. Now this deck, my first deck was the 1JJ Swiss, and I had that a number of years, and I started collecting decks like Tarot Classic and the 007 deck, the Fergus Hall deck, before I probably ever bought a Rider Waite. In fact, the first Waite Coleman Smith deck I ever bought was the Albano Waite deck. So this wouldn't have even been first. No, wait a minute. Sorry. Wrong deck. Wrong box. So this one wouldn't have even been first. And gosh, there's just no date on the box at all, so I don't know. I just don't know what year this came out. But I'd love to know if any of you know what year the red-faced, you know, what, I'd love to know what I lost. Well, maybe I shouldn't know. But with me, I'm pretty fastidious, and if I lost something, it's probably because it got lost in a move. And maybe it was like a box that got lost more than it was me being careless. Because I was pretty fastidious, always, about things that were important to me. I don't typically lose things, very rarely. And you can see that the backgrounds of both really do capture the fact that it's, I use the word textured, but I guess it's speckled. Whereas the background, you know, it's not the same card, but they're all the same in this deck, right? You see that there's no texture at all. Look at the faces here. Let's go back and look at the faces. Let's compare these faces. Oh man, there's so much lost in that translation there. I mean, I guess essentially the faces are there, but it's a subtle thing. So I've screwed up the order there, for sure. So the grays are a little different and the yellows are a little different between the 1909 art restoration deck created by C in London and the Robert Steyn deck over at Make Playing Cards. That the blues aren't all that different. You can tell by the human, you know, by the naked eye, you can see a little bit of a difference, but boy, not nearly as different as, you know, something as god-awful as this. Oy. You know, I don't want to besmirch anyone, but, you know, sometimes there's a certain amount of greed or a certain amount of indifference to the integrity of a product, you know, and you just start cranking stuff out and you're not paying attention or you're not concerning yourself with quality control. And I'm not saying that's what they did, but There's just no comparison. Let me pull this card from the modern deck. Okie doke. Well, you could decide for yourselves what you think. The stained glass window is certainly more colorful, definitely enhanced, but that's not how it originally, maybe it was originally, I don't know, but maybe it was that bright, and the 1909 copy that exists just isn't as bright. Maybe US Game Systems Inc. made an effort to just restore it to its brightness. I don't know. So we see she has a polka dot shawl here and here. It's not as pronounced. I don't know. I just think these reproductions are a lot easier on the eyeball. And in 1909, his face wasn't like that. Oh, this is the box for this one. This is such a rich card. Look, oh gosh. All right, let me pull this card in the modern deck and see what beauty we lose. The other thing to mention too, of course, is that we have the plaid backs, which we've had for decades now. And this version, 2007, is very plastic in feel. Of course, so the Make Playing Cards and whatever publisher that C in London used, whatever company they used, it's highly more desirable than this one. Okay, here she's got the red face, just like the magician did, or no, on the other box, but she's got a very bright red face. And let's look at the detail in the back. Not too bad. Not too bad, a loss of detail. I have to keep track of which deck is which. I don't want to put them in the wrong deck, my goodness. But thank goodness their backs are different. I can't tell you how many times after I've done videos and I've had a half a dozen decks or more on the table and I can't find them all. I put them in the wrong, oh my gosh. Doing videos like this can really be hard, you know. Anyway, I think that if you're a person who collects tarot and you have an interest in collecting from a historic perspective, which these are historic decks, and even though I am a person who prefers pip style, whether it's from Italy or the TDM out of France or the Swiss or Belgium or whatever, I appreciate having a historic deck, period, and there's no way to deny that these aren't historic decks. I mean, they're already 113 years old, and the way I roll is I like to be as close to a source as I possibly can, and these two decks, whether you pick this one maybe being a little more close to the original scans, they're as close to the 1909 source as we can possibly get. And the deck that I'll be getting this afternoon from Conrad Steyn, the Pamela A 1910 deck. My next video will be comparing this to that. Remember, that was the year after this. And because he wanted to make improvement to his deck, and I believe color was the primary reason. So we're going to take a look at that too, comparing this one to that one, to see what changes he had in mind. And I think both the 1909 and the 1910 Pamela A deck, I think both of those decks have its historic significance. And so that's why I have them. And that's why maybe some of you will want them too. But I do think these, whichever one of these you get, it's much easier on the eyeballs than anything that came out in the 90s or the 2000s, you know, this other deck that I've been referencing as a modern deck, you know, no wonder I never really liked, I never really liked it that much. You know, with these I could live with, you know, the color is nice. I don't know what this deck that I lost or I can't find at the moment looked like. And if anybody can tell me what this was, and maybe I can try to find it so I can just have it as a replacement. I mean, that's what this one was. This one was a replacement for that, for this one that I lost. But if it's as god-awful as the one that I have over here, I don't know if I'd even want it. These are so much nicer. So it's been 37 minutes, and I know only my truest hardcore fans are watching, and I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. You may have noticed that I've recently monetized my channel, which meant that I got to over 1,000 subscribers, and I am so incredibly grateful for that. Any of you who like any of my efforts and you give me a like, I don't beg for likes very often, but I know it's important, and I should ask for it more frequently than I do. And oh, you know, I guess I shouldn't have mentioned this is so late in my video, but my course that I provide online, a series of 7 or 8 videos, it keeps growing, but the price hasn't changed. I've made tweaks to my lessons, and I think they're better than before. Some of the lessons I kept, some of the lessons I just changed and redid completely. So if you have any interest in completing my course, it's 7, probably closer to 8 hours worth of video instruction on TDM decks. I'm not addressing or discussing the Rider-Waite Smith deck, so I'm not, addressing that. But I've covered about every area of learning how to interpret TDM. Oh, something's wrong. Okay, so that's 6, and this is 7. Huh. Okay, so I screwed up. Oh, yeah, I don't know what I did wrong. 5, 6. Okay, so this one I got right. 4, 5, 6. I don't know. Let me pause. So I don't know what happened here. I'm going to have to go through my decks and make sure I wasn't missing any cards. I don't know what happened. But at any rate, getting back to my course, you know, I don't tout my wares as often as I ought, and I give away a lot for free, you know, and it's not like I'm rich. I just, you know, I purchase decks to the loss of other things I could spend my money on, you know, because it's become a priority for me. And I need to recoup some of my time and effort. You know, I put out a lot of free videos that are instructional, as well as, you know, like this. And I would wholeheartedly appreciate your support. And please don't count me out as far as, you know, being a teacher, because that's what I do. I'm a great teacher. I was, you know, I was an educator in like school for kids, you know, for 20 years, you know, and I was exceptional there, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to admit it. And I'm an exceptional tarot teacher too, and I don't mind tooting my own horn. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the side-by-side comparison of the 1909 Restoration Art deck by C in London with the Conrad Steyn version of the printing of the same deck. As I said, the Conrad Steyn is supposedly, of the two, the more exact to the one original deck that exists, owned by Saskia Jansen, of the 1909 original publication of the Rider Waite Smith collaboration. Stay tuned for the second video that'll be in a day or two regarding the 1909 and the 1910 deck, and then for a video about an incredible journey I've had in hunting down one of my most elusive ancestors that I have, and almost literally coming face to face with her, and a real astounding moment in my life. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.